I trace stolen money for a living, and my face is on a missing persons flyer. My cousin texted the link at 11:42 on a Tuesday while I sat at my desk on the 14th floor of the Klein building, and the photo they used was from graduation, the one where Mom pinned a corsage to my collar and whispered something I never caught. 5 years, the flyer said. We just want our baby home. In my bottom drawer, under the quarterly reports, there is a black binder with red tabs. 5 tabs. 1 for each year they said I was gone. I have not opened tab 4 yet. They brought a missing persons report. I brought 5 years of bank statements. Stay for this one. You will want to see what those statements prove. I was 24 when I walked out of my parents' kitchen with flour still on my hands and a phone full of calls I would never return. That kitchen smells like yeast and dish soap. November. The window above the sink fogged from the pasta water, and I was elbow deep in flour because Mom wanted dinner rolls for the Hendersons who were coming at 7, and I had been baking since 4 because no one else in that house measured anything. I measured everything. 3 cups, 2 sticks, 14 minutes at 3:75. I had been measuring since I was 19 when they handed me the checkbook and said, "You are the responsible one." The responsible one. That was my title. Not daughter, not Evelyn, the responsible one. Derek got a different title. Derek got golden. Derek got a car at 17 and a gap year at 22 and a rent check every first of the month that I wrote, signed, and deposited into his account while he slept until noon in a 1-bedroom I was also covering. The Tuesday I paid for the water heater, the one that cost $460, Derek was in the next room playing a video game with the volume up so loud I could hear the explosions through the drywall. I signed the plumber's invoice at the kitchen table. He did not pause his game. Love was a budget in that house, and Derek was the line item always funded first. I was the revenue line, the source, the account you draw from until the balance gets uncomfortable, then you close it and tell people it vanished. Here is the thing I want you to understand about my father, because I will not let this story flatten him into a shape he doesn't deserve. When I was 7, he sat me at that same kitchen table on a Sunday morning and poured a jar of coins across the oilcloth. Pennies, nickels, dimes, quarters, cold metal, that green penny smell, the heavy clink of a quarter stack tipping sideways. He said, "Count them, but don't rush." And I sorted them into piles, and he corrected my grip on the quarters, and his hands were patient, and the coffee in his mug was black and bitter smelling, and he said, "Good, now count them slower." That was before the measuring became an obligation. That was before the counting became a cage. I keep that morning. I keep the cold coins and his thumb on my wrist steadying me. I keep the weight of a full palm of pennies, how they pulled my hand down like a small anchor. I count things. That is my tell. Transactions, plates at a table, seconds in a silence, steps from the parking lot to the office door. 14 steps. I have counted them every morning for 6 years. It is not anxiety, it is architecture. If I can count it, I can file it. If I can file it, it cannot be rewritten. Lena understood this before I explained it. Lena sat 2 desks over at Klein & Associates, and she had a habit of setting a coffee at my elbow at 10:15 without asking if I wanted one, without announcing it, without waiting for thanks. Just the warm paper cup appearing beside my keyboard like a small, unquestionable fact. The morning after the flyer, the morning after I sat in my apartment until 3 a.m. staring at my own face under the word missing, I came in at 8 and the coffee was already there. She did not look up from her monitor. She did not say, "I saw the news." She did not say, "Are you okay?" She left the cup and went back to her reconciliation spreadsheet, and I picked it up, and it was warm, and I drank it, and I opened my laptop, and I started building the binder. Evidence ledger, item 1. Date March 9th, 2019. Document Joint Savings Account, routing ending 4471. Opened by Linda and Gerald Johnson. Authorized user added Evelyn Johnson, age 19. Filing tag Origin. That account was the first chain. I deposited my paycheck into it for 5 years. Groceries, insurance, Derek's rent, the property tax on the house I did not own, every deposit logged, every withdrawal itemized. I kept copies because my father taught me to count twice, and I never stopped counting, even when the counting became a record of my own disappearance. The exile happened on a Saturday. I remember because I had just come from the copy shop on 9th Street, toner on my fingers, and I called Mom from the car. I said, I am closing the joint account. 60 days notice, I will transfer the balance, and then it's done. Silence on the line. Then, you cannot do that. I said, I can. I am. She said, your brother's rent. I said, Derek is 26. She said, the insurance. I said, you can put it in your own name. She said, you're being selfish. I said, I am being solvent. And then she said the thing she always said when the numbers did not favor her, the thing that was supposed to end the conversation the way a gavel ends a hearing. Family doesn't keep score, Evelyn. I let that sit for 3 seconds. 3. I counted. I said, you're right, I will stop keeping score. And I stopped funding. She said, if you close that account, don't bother coming home. I said, okay. I hung up. I drove to the bank on 4th and Elm. I filed the revocation of authorized user, Form 77B, signed, dated, notarized by a woman with a gold pen who did not ask questions. I closed the account. I opened a new one at a different institution, single name, no joint access, no authorized users. I went home. I did not cry. I made pasta. I ate it standing over the sink because the table felt too large for one person. I washed the pot. I dried my hands on the dish towel, the blue one with the fraying hem. I opened a new spreadsheet and typed the date at the top. If you are new here, this is Revenge Tales, where every story comes with a mechanism you can use. Subscribe. Settle in. We're going back 5 years, and we're going to open every tab. The first year was quiet. That is what I want you to understand. No dramatic confrontation, no slammed door, just a closed account and a woman learning to cook for one. I moved to a studio on Birch Street, small. The radiator clinked at 2 a.m. like a pipe trying to clear its throat. I got a position at Klein doing transactional forensics, tracing embezzlement for mid-size firms. And I was good at it because I had been tracing my own household spending since I was 19, and I knew exactly how a person hides a withdrawal inside a deposit. You bury it in the rounding. You call it MISC. You do it on a Friday when no one is checking. Derek texted me twice that first year, once to ask if I could cover his phone bill, once to say Mom was not doing well. I did not answer either. I filed the texts. Screenshot, date, time. I was building a habit I didn't yet have a name for. By year 2, the narrative started. Aunt Karen mentioned it at a mutual friend's wedding, which I attended for exactly 40 minutes before leaving through the side parking lot. She cornered me by the punch bowl and said, "Your mother is just devastated, Evelyn. She doesn't know where you are." I said, "I am here." Aunt Karen blinked. I said, "I am standing right here." She said, "Well, you know what I mean." I did not know what she meant. I went home. I logged the interaction. Date, location, witness. The group chat was worse. I was still technically in the family group chat because no one had removed me, and in year 2, Mom posted a photo of my empty bedroom. The bed made, the desk clear, a caption, "Still waiting." 14 heart emojis from cousins I hadn't spoken to in a decade. I screenshot it. I saved it. I did not respond. I put the phone back down and finished my dinner. In year 3, a woman at the grocery store on Birch Street stopped me in the cereal aisle and said, "Are you the Johnson girl, the one who went missing?" I held a box of oats in both hands and felt the cardboard soften under my grip. I said, "No." She said, "You look just like the photo." I set the oats in the cart. I walked to the self-checkout. I scanned my items. I drove home. I opened the binder, tab 2. I wrote the date, the store, the aisle number, cereal aisle, oats. I didn't know why the aisle number mattered. It mattered. Everything with a number mattered. Lena drove me to the dentist that year. I had a cracked molar and a fear of the drill, and she sat in the waiting room for an hour reading a paperback with a cracked spine, and when I came out with gauze in my mouth and my jaw numb, she handed me a milkshake from the place across the street. Chocolate. She said, "You can't chew for 2 hours." I said, "Thank you." She said, "Don't thank me. Drink the shake." I drank the shake in the passenger seat while she drove, and the straw made a small gurgling sound, and neither of us talked, and that was the whole gift. No invoice, no ledger, just a milkshake and a woman who didn't need me to be useful to sit beside me. The smear deepened in year 4. Mom did a segment for the local news. Channel 9, a 2-minute piece, missing daughter, grieving parents. A photo of me at 22, smiling, holding a cake I had baked for Derek's birthday. The reporter said, "If you have any information." The ticker at the bottom of the screen said, "Evelyn Johnson, last seen," and then a date, 18 months after I had actually left. 18 months. They had backdated the disappearance. I watched it in my office with the door closed and the blinds drawn. I did not turn it off. I watched it twice. I noted the date they gave. I noted the photo. I noted the reporter's name. I opened the binder. Tab 3. I slid the printout behind the existing pages. I did not open tab 4. Tab 4 was not ready. Tab 4 was waiting for something I could already feel coming, the way you feel a pressure change before a storm. If this is hitting close to home, if someone in your life is rewriting what happens between you, drop a comment. You do not have to carry the correct version by yourself. In year 5, the text came. My cousin Jess, 11:42 on a Tuesday. The link, the flyer, my face under the word missing. 5 years. I stared at it for 9 minutes. I counted. 9 minutes of staring at my own photograph, wondering which version of me they were mourning. The one who baked the rolls, the one who wrote the checks, the one who disappeared, the one who was not allowed to leave. I called Jess back. I said, "How long has this been up?" She said, "The report was filed in September." I said, "September of which year?" She said, "Last year. 18 months after you walked out. They filed it 18 months after you left." I said, "Thank you." I hung up. I sat at my desk. The office was cold. The vent above me pushed dry air onto my forearms, and I could smell the toner from the printer down the hall, and I put both hands flat on the desk and pressed until my palms ached. I opened the laptop. I started tab 4. The invitation came in October of year 5. A text from Mom. Warm, careful, punctuation perfect, which meant she had drafted it 3 times. Thanksgiving at the house. Just family. We miss you. Come home. I read it 4 times. I set the phone on my desk. I looked at the photos on the filing cabinet. It had 3 new leaves. I looked at the phone again. Just family. The last time she said just family, there were 9 people at the table, and I was the one clearing plates. I did not reply for 2 days. On the 3rd day, I replied, "I will think about it." She responded in 11 seconds. 11. She had been watching the screen. Here is what I did instead of saying yes. I pulled my credit report, all 3 bureaus. I checked for accounts I did not recognize. I found one, a credit card, opened 14 months prior, in my name, billing address, my parents' house. 14 months. I had been gone 5 years, and they opened a card in my name 14 months ago. I printed the statement. I highlighted the billing address. I filed it. Tab 4. I called the county records office. I asked for any filings in my name in the last 3 years. The clerk, a woman named Diane with a slow drawl and a keyboard that clacked like a metronome, said, "Hold on." She held. 3 minutes. She came back and said, "There is a power of attorney filed 8 months ago. Grantor, Evelyn Johnson. Agent, Linda Johnson." I said, "I did not file that." She said, "Ma'am, I can only tell you what is in the system." I said, "Can you tell me the notary?" She gave me a name. A notary I had never met, in a town 40 minutes from my apartment, in a county where I had not set foot in 5 years. I wrote the name down. I said, "Thank you, Diane." I hung up. I sat in my office for a long time. The parking garage outside my window was empty. A single shopping cart sat in the far lane, one wheel spinning in the wind. I watched the wheels spin, round and round, going nowhere. I pressed my fingertips to the glass. Cold, smooth. I left them there until the cold reached the bone. I called my attorney, not a family lawyer, a forensic document specialist named Ruth Ofaka, who worked out of a brick building downtown and who answered the phone herself. I said, "Someone filed a power of attorney in my name with a notary I have never met." She said, "Bring me the filing number." I brought her the filing number. She called me back in 2 days and said, "The signature is a poor forgery. The notary's stamp does not match the registered seal for that commission. This is void, and it is also a felony." I said, "I need it documented." She said, "I will get you a certified affidavit of invalidity and a fraud referral to the county clerk." I said, "How long?" She said, 3 weeks. I said, "I need it in 2. She said, "Come pick it up Friday." The mechanism, and here is where I need you to track this because it will matter later. A power of attorney is only valid if the grantor signs it willingly before a registered notary. If the notary's seal does not match the commission on file with the county, the document is void. Not voidable, void. It never existed legally, and if someone submitted it to access your accounts, that's not a family disagreement. That's fraud. You can check your own county records. Most offices have an online search. You type in your name, you see what's been filed. You see who filed it. You see the date. If you find something you didn't sign, you call the county clerk, you request a fraud investigation, and you contact an attorney. You don't call the person who filed it. You call the system. I picked up the affidavit on a Friday. Rain. The brick building smelled like wet stone. Ruth handed me a manila envelope, and inside was a certified declaration, the notary comparison, the fraud referral with a case number. I put it in my bag. I went home. I opened the binder. Tab 4. I slid the affidavit behind the credit card statement, behind the county filing printout, behind 3 bank notifications showing attempted access to my old retirement account using the forged power of attorney. 3 attempts, 3 dates, all within the last 4 months, all flagged by the institution as unauthorized, all denied, but attempted. I tabbed them. I labeled them. I closed the binder. 5 tabs, 5 years. The black spine was thick now, heavy. I put it in my fire safe. I locked the safe. I put the key in my coat pocket. 9 days. Thanksgiving was in 9 days. I said yes to dinner. The house looked the same. That was the first thing. The shutters needed paint, and the walkway had a new crack, but the porch light was the same brass fixture, and the dead moth was still inside the glass, and the smell was the same, cinnamon and roasted onions and furniture polish. I stood on the walkway for a moment, 14 steps from the car to the door. I counted them. Old habit, new purpose. 9 plates. I saw them through the screen door before I knocked. 9. Mom, Dad, Derek, Derek's girlfriend, Aunt Karen, Uncle Phil, 2 cousins I recognized, and a place setting at the head of the table with a small card that read, Evelyn, in Mom's handwriting. My name, written in the present tense, as if I had never left, as if I were still the one clearing plates. Mom opened the door. She touched my arm. Her fingers were dry, papery. She said, "You look thin." I said, "I look the same." She said, "Come in. Everyone has been so worried." I stepped inside. I set my bag under the chair at the place setting with my name. The bag held the binder. The binder held 5 years. Dinner was a performance. The turkey was dry. Derek talked about a business idea involving mobile car detailing. Aunt Karen asked me 3 times if I was seeing anyone. I answered in monosyllables. I ate 2 bites of stuffing. I watched my father's hands. He was cutting his turkey into precise squares, small, even squares. I used to cut my meat for me when I was 4. I watched him cut, and I did not feel anything, and the not feeling was the point. Derek's girlfriend was eating a dinner roll like it had personally offended her, tearing off pieces with a small, furious precision, and I thought, at least someone at this table is honest about what they want. Coffee was served. Mom cleared her throat. The sound had a rehearsed quality, a small intake before the words, like a singer finding the first note. She said, "Evelyn, we are so glad you are here. We want to put things right." I said, "Okay." She said, "We want you to sign something, just a formality, so we can manage the house, the accounts while you get settled." She reached under the tablecloth and produced a folder, cream-colored, a notary stamp visible on the top page. I did not take it. 7 seconds. I counted. 7 seconds of silence while 9 people watched me look at the folder and not take it. I said, "Manage what accounts?" She said, "The house, the trust, your retirement, just until things are sorted." I said, "What trust?" Dad spoke. His voice was careful, measured, the voice he used when he was explaining a bill to a customer. He said, "The family trust, your grandfather's. Your share has been in limbo since you were gone, and there is a clause, a presumption-of-absence clause, that allows the remaining trustees to redistribute if a beneficiary is unreachable for 5 years. We need you to sign a reactivation, confirm you are here, confirm the account." I said, "And if I do not sign?" Mom's face shifted, small, a tightening around the mouth. She said, "Evelyn, do not do this." I said, "Do what?" She said, "Disappear again, vanish. You cannot just walk away from this family. You owe me." Not us, me. She said, "You owe me." As if the whole arrangement had been a personal loan, as if I were a balance she carried in her purse. I reached under the chair. I pulled out the bag. I pulled out the binder. Black, red tabs, 5 of them. I set it on the table next to the dry turkey and the cream-colored folder and the 9 plates. I opened it to tab 1. I said, March 9th, 2019, joint savings account, routing ending 4471. I deposited $412 every 2 weeks for 5 years. Total contribution, $51,488. I withdrew nothing, not $1. Every deposit is documented. Every withdrawal is documented. Tab 1. I turned the page. I said, Tab 2. September 14th, 2020. You filed a missing persons report with the county sheriff, 18 months after I left. I pulled the filing. I have the case number. I also pulled the tax returns for the same year. You claimed me as a dependent, a missing person, a person you publicly grieved, and also a dependent, a deduction, both in the same filing. Tab 2. Mom's face shifted. She said, Evelyn, do not do this. I turned to tab 3. I said, Channel 9, Year 4, 2-minute segment. You told the reporter you did not know where I was. You said, and I quote, "We just want our baby home." 3 weeks before that interview, you attempted to access my retirement account using the joint authorization I revoked in 2019. The bank denied the request. I have the denial letter. Tab 3. Aunt Karen set down her fork. The sound was small, metallic, final. Tab 4. I said, 8 months ago, a power of attorney was filed in my name. Grantor, Evelyn Johnson. Agent, Linda Johnson. Notarized by a commission in Hartwell County. I have never been to Hartwell County. I have never met the notary. The signature is a forgery. I have a certified affidavit from a forensic document specialist. I have a fraud referral with a case number. I have 3 attempted accesses to my retirement account using that document. All denied, all logged. Tab 4. I turned to tab 5, the last tab. I said tab 5, the presumption-of-absence clause in grandfather's trust, section 14. I read it. It triggers when a beneficiary is unreachable for 5 consecutive years. But here is what it also says. It says the clause is void if the trustees had knowledge of the beneficiary's location or attempted contact during that period. You filed a missing persons report. You did a news segment. You posted in the group chat. You texted me. You invited me to this dinner. You knew where I was. You knew I was alive. You tried to spend me while telling the world I was gone. Tab 5. I closed the binder. I put my hand flat on the cover. I looked at my mother. Family doesn't keep score. She stared at me. I let it sit. I said, I didn't vanish. You just lost the account number. Dad set his fork down. He looked at the binder. He looked at me. For one moment, one small, fractured moment, his face did something I had not seen in 5 years. It crumpled, just at the edges, just the mouth. He looked like the man who had steadied my hand over the coins. And then it was gone, rebuilt, smooth. He picked up his coffee, he drank. He said nothing. Mr. Patel looked at the screen. He looked at Mom. He said, Ma'am, I am going to note for the record that the clause is inapplicable. The beneficiary was reachable. The presumption of absence does not hold. No redistribution will occur. He closed the portfolio. He said, I will also be forwarding the power of attorney filing to the county fraud division. Good evening. He left. The front door closed. Soft, not a slam, a latch. Derek's girlfriend whispered something to Derek. Aunt Karen picked up her purse. Uncle Phil stood. The room emptied in small, shuffling increments, chairs scraping, coats rustling. No one looked at me. No one looked at Mom. They looked at the floor, at their plates, at the door. They left. Mom stood at the head of the table. She held the cream-colored folder, the power of attorney, the one she needed me to sign. She set it down. She picked it up. She set it down again. I watched her hands. She was thinking about what to say next, and I could see her assembling it, the way she assembled everything, a small, careful architecture of words designed to make the listener feel the debtor. But the architecture was broken. The numbers were on the table. She said, Evelyn? I said, no. She said, I said, no. She opened her mouth, closed it. She picked up a plate. She walked to the kitchen. The fountain turned, water running over porcelain. I stood. I picked up the binder. I put it in my bag. I looked at my father. He was still sitting, cutting his turkey into small, even squares. He did not look up. I said, Goodbye, Dad. He did not answer. I walked to the door. 14 steps. I counted. I opened the door. I stepped onto the porch. The brass light hummed. The dead moth was still inside the glass. I walked to my car. I got in. I closed the door. Not a slam. A click. The accounts froze in December. The joint authorization, already revoked, was flagged system-wide. The credit card they opened in my name was reported as fraudulent and closed. The collection agency sent 3 letters to the house on Maple Street. I know because the letters were returned to sender, and the sender was my old address, and the return came to me, and I read them, and I filed them. Tab 5. Closed. The missing persons report was corrected in January. I went to the sheriff's office with my identification, my employment records, my lease, my utility bills, 5 years of proof I existed. The deputy was young, apologetic. He said, "Ma'am, I am sorry." I said, "It is not your fault." He said, "We will update the file." I said, "Thank you." I signed the correction. I walked out. The parking lot was empty except for a single shopping cart with one wheel spinning. Same as the one outside the county records office. Maybe the same cart. I did not check. Some things you leave uncounted. The trust redistribution was voided formally in February. Mr. Patel sent a letter, certified, 1 page. The presumption-of-absence clause was inapplicable. The beneficiary share remained intact. No further action required. I put the letter in the fire safe. I locked it. Derek called once, in March. His voice was thin, scraped. He said, "Evelyn, I did not know about the power of attorney." I said, "Okay." He said, "Mom is not doing well." I said, "I'm sorry to hear that." He said, "Can you?" I said, "No." He said, "I just thought." I said, "I know what you thought. Goodbye, Derek." He did not say goodbye. The line went quiet. I hung up. I put the phone face down. I finished my coffee. The group chat went silent in April. No more photos of my empty room. No more captions. No more heart emojis. Just silence. I stayed in the chat. I did not leave. I did not need to. There was nothing left to screenshot. My grandmother called 2 times. I did not answer. She left 1 voicemail. Her voice was smaller than I remembered, crocked at the edges. She said, "Evelyn, I am sorry. I should not have filed the report. I shouldn't have. I just didn't know how to tell people you chose to leave. I didn't know how to say that." I listened to it once. I deleted it. Not out of cruelty, out of completion. There was nothing in it I could use. No correction, no filing, no date. Just the sound of a woman discovering that the person she invoiced had a name. My kitchen is small. The counter is scratched. The window faces the parking garage, and at night the security light buzzes and makes the glass hum. I made pasta on a Thursday. Nothing special. Garlic, olive oil, the good salt. I ate at the table, the small, round table Lena helped me pick out at a second-hand store 3 years ago, and the photos was on the sill behind me, and the radiator clanked its 2 a.m. clank, and I didn't count the clanks. I just heard them. I let them be uncounted. 1 sound, no ledger, no filing tag, just the pipe clearing its throat in the dark. I thought about the coins, the cold pennies on the oilcloth, his thumb on my wrist, count them again slower. I was 7, and the counting was a gift. It wasn't a cage yet. It was just a man teaching his daughter that the world had edges, and you could find them if you were patient. I still have that, the patience, the edges. But the man who gave it to me is not the man who cut his turkey into squares and did not look up. Those are 2 different people wearing the same face, and I have to carry both, and I don't get to put one down. That's the cost, not the money, not the trust. The cost is that I will never sit at a kitchen table and count coins with someone who is not also counting what I owe. The cost is that the patient hands and the forging hands belong to the same man, and I have to grieve one while the other is still alive, still cutting turkey into squares in a house I will not enter again. The binder is in the fire safe, locked, I do not open it anymore. I do not need to. The tabs are full. The dates are fixed. The numbers are the numbers. I can close the drawer and walk away, and the numbers will still be there. And that is the point. That was always the point. You do not need to carry the proof in your body. You put it in the binder, you lock the binder. You let the system hold it. Here's what I learned, and I will say it plainly because someone needs to hear it said plainly. You do not owe anyone access to your life just because they share your blood. Love is not a joint account. You can revoke authorization. You can close the account. You can walk out of a kitchen with flour on your hands and not come back. And that does not make you missing. That makes you solvent. And here's the mechanism, the real one, the one you can use tomorrow. Go to your county records office. Most have an online search. Type your name, look for filings, power of attorney, lien, property transfer, anything. If you find something you didn't sign, you call the clerk. You request a fraud investigation. You pull your credit report, all 3 bureaus, free, once a year at annualcreditreport.com. You check every account. You check every authorized user. You check every joint designation. You check your tax transcripts at the IRS website to make sure no one has claimed you as a dependent you didn't agree to be. And if someone in your family is holding your money, your name, your identity as leverage, you revoke. In writing, notarized, filed. You do not call them. You do not negotiate. You file. You let the paper do the arguing. You let the system be the one who says no. If this story helped you see your own situation more clearly, share it with one person who needs to hear it. That's all I ask. One person, one share. Because the quiet one was counting the whole time, and now you know where to look.